The world stopped the instant Kate's wheelchair crashed backward onto the pavement outside the Daily Scoop. Her tray shattered. Coffee splashed across concrete. Her palms scraped raw against the ground. And above her, Ethan Phelps stood in his gold and brown varsity jacket, laughing like he'd just won something. She lay there, hurt, humiliated, helpless, while customers froze behind the diner's windows, watching but not moving. Then a sound cut through the stillness. Engines, 10 of them, deep, rolling, unmistakable thunder. The Iron Crossroads Motorcycle Club appeared at the end of Riverside Avenue like a wall of leather and chrome, their boots shaking the earth beneath them. And in that moment, everything changed. Because today, the powerless would rise, the bully would fall, and one woman's dignity would be restored by strangers who refused to look away. Before we continue, kindly help our growth by subscribing to this channel, Twister Stories. Thank you as you do so. Let's get back to the story. Kate Thompson had learned early that the world wasn't built for people like her. Not the cramped bathroom stalls, not the narrow aisles between diner tables, and certainly not the patience of customers who sighed when she took too long maneuvering between booths. At 21, she'd spent 3 years in a wheelchair after a car accident stole her ability to walk, and every single day since had been a quiet battle to prove she wasn't fragile, wasn't helpless, wasn't less than anyone else. The Daily Scoop wasn't fancy, but it was hers in a way. She knew every crack in the checkered floor, every wobble in table 7, every customer's usual order. She worked double shifts because rent didn't care about disability, and besides, staying busy kept her mind from wandering into darker places. She'd built walls around herself, thick ones made of sarcasm and silence, because it hurt less than hoping people would see past the chair. Most days she managed. She kept her head down, ignored the stares, brushed off the occasional thoughtless comment. But Ethan Phelps was different. He wasn't thoughtless. He was cruel on purpose. He'd started coming around 2 months ago, usually with a couple of friends who laughed at everything he said like he was performing stand-up. Early 20s, cocky smile, varsity jacket from a school he probably barely graduated from. He had that particular brand of arrogance that came from never being told no, never facing real consequences. And for reasons Kate couldn't understand, he decided she was entertainment. At first it was small things. Calling her wheels instead of her name. Asking loudly if she needed help reaching things that were clearly within her grasp. Making jokes about wheelchair racing. Kate ignored him, served his coffee, took his money, and turned away. She dealt with worse. But today was different. It started when she brought his order out. Black coffee, blueberry muffin, same as always. He waited until she set the plate down, then deliberately shoved it toward the edge of the table. Not enough to fall, just enough to make her reach awkwardly to steady it. Oops, he said, smirking. Guess your reflexes aren't what they used to be. His friend snickered. Kate's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She turned to leave. That's when he kicked. Not her leg, her wheelchair. A deliberate, vicious shove against the wheel that sent her chair tilting violently sideways. She gasped, reaching for anything to steady herself. But momentum had already won. The tray flew from her lap. Her hands hit concrete first, skin tearing. Then her shoulder. Then the rest of her, as the chair toppled completely, metal clattering against pavement in a sound that echoed down the entire street. For a moment, there was only silence. Kate lay sprawled on the ground outside the diner, her wheelchair on its side beside her, pain shooting through her palms and shoulder. But worse than the pain was the shame. The burning, suffocating humiliation of being on the ground while people stared. Through the diner windows, she could see faces frozen in shock. On the sidewalk, a couple of pedestrians had stopped walking, and above her, Ethan stood with his hands in his pockets, grinning like he'd just pulled off the best prank of his life. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody helped. Kate squeezed her eyes shut. Fighting tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Then she heard it. Faint at first, like distant thunder rolling in from somewhere far away. A low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the pavement itself. Motorcycle engines. Getting closer. The sound grew louder, deeper, impossible to ignore. Kate opened her eyes and tilted her head toward Riverside Avenue, where 10 motorcycles appeared in tight formation, their chrome gleaming under the afternoon sun. They moved like a single unit, deliberate and commanding, engines growling with a power that made the air itself feel heavier. Ethan's smile faltered. His friends shuffled backward. The motorcycles slowed as they approached the Daily Scoop, forming a protective semicircle around Kate's fallen form. One by one, the engines cut off, leaving behind a silence so thick it felt like the entire street was holding its breath. The riders dismounted. 10 of them, all wearing black leather vests marked with the Iron Crossroads insignia, all standing with the kind of presence that didn't need words to command respect. The leader stepped forward. He was tall and broad-shouldered, probably in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark beard and eyes that carried both warmth and weight. His vest had a patch that read Charles, and another that said President. He moved toward Kate with careful, measured steps, his expression focused entirely on her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice low and steady. "Are you hurt?" Kate blinked up at him, disoriented by the sudden shift from humiliation to protection. "I don't know. My hands." "Let's get you up first," Charles said, and he gestured to 2 of his fellow riders. They moved instantly, one gently righting the wheelchair while the other knelt beside Kate. She flinched instinctively. She hated being helped, hated feeling like she needed rescuing. But something in the way they moved, patient and respectful, made her relax slightly. "We're going to lift you slow," the biker beside her said. His name patch read Danny. "Tell us if anything hurts." They lifted her with astonishing gentleness, hands supporting her back and legs, moving in sync like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Within seconds, Kate was back in her wheelchair, her scraped palms stinging, but her dignity beginning to return. One of the bikers, a woman with short gray hair and kind eyes, produced a small first aid kit from her saddlebag and crouched beside Kate. "I'm Maggie," she said softly. "Let me see your hands." Kate extended her trembling palms, and Maggie began cleaning the scrapes with quiet efficiency. Around them, the other bikers stood in a loose circle, not aggressive, but unmistakably present. Charles turned slowly toward Ethan, who had gone pale and silent. "You got something to say?" Charles asked. His tone wasn't threatening. He didn't need it to be. The question itself carried all the weight necessary. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then tried to swagger through. "I didn't. It was just a joke, man. She's fine." A joke. Charles repeated the words like he was testing their taste and finding them right. "You think knocking a woman out of her wheelchair is funny? I barely touched it." "I saw what you did," Danny interrupted, standing up from where he'd been adjusting Kate's wheelchair. "We all saw it. We were coming down the street when you kicked her chair. You think we're blind." Ethan's bravado crumbled. "Look, I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you did," Charles said, stepping closer. Not intimidating, just present. "Now you're going to stand there while we call the police, and you're going to explain to them why you thought assault was entertainment." "Assault? Come on, that's—" One of the other bikers was already on his phone. "Yeah. Hi, I need to report an assault outside the Daily Scoop on Riverside Avenue. Young man just knocked a disabled woman out of her wheelchair. We have multiple witnesses. Ethan's face went from pale to gray. He glanced toward his friends, but they'd already backed away, distancing themselves. Kate watched from her chair, bandaged hands resting in her lap, as the reality of the situation settled over her. These strangers, these 10 bikers who looked like they could intimidate anyone, had stopped everything to protect her. Not for glory, not for thanks. Simply because what happened was wrong. Charles knelt beside her wheelchair, meeting her eyes with unexpected gentleness. You doing okay? Kate nodded slowly. I don't understand. Why did you stop? Because nobody should have to go through that alone, Charles said simply. And because we don't tolerate bullies. He glanced back at Ethan. Doesn't matter how big or small someone is. Doesn't matter if they can walk or not. You don't hurt people for fun. Not on our watch. Within minutes, a police car arrived. 2 officers stepped out, and the bikers explained what they'd witnessed. Ethan tried to argue, tried to minimize, but when faced with 10 consistent testimonies and the visible scrapes on Kate's hands, his excuses dissolved. The officers took statements, photographed Kate's injuries, and eventually placed Ethan in the back of their patrol car. His varsity jacket looked smaller somehow, less impressive under the weight of consequence. Before the police drove away, one of the officers approached Kate. You want to press charges? Kate looked at Ethan through the car window, at the bully who'd made her feel small and powerless. Then she looked at the bikers standing around her like a wall of quiet strength. Yes, she said firmly, I do. After the police left, Charles and his crew didn't rush away. They stayed while Maggie finished bandaging Kate's hands. They stayed while the diner manager, a kind older man named Lou, came outside apologizing profusely for not intervening sooner. They stayed until Kate's friend and co-worker, Sarah, arrived to take over her shift, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Kate carefully. I saw it through the window, Sarah whispered. I should have come out sooner. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Kate said, and she meant it. Because she understood fear. She understood freezing. She understood how hard it was to stand up when you weren't sure you'd win. Charles helped Kate inside, maneuvering her chair through the diner door with practiced ease. Lou insisted on comping meals for all the bikers. It's the least I can do. And soon the Daily Scoop was filled with leather vests, coffee cups, and the low rumble of conversation. Customers who'd been silent earlier now approached Kate, offering apologies and support. One older woman squeezed her shoulder gently. A father with 2 young kids thanked the bikers in front of his children, wanting them to see what real strength looked like. Kate sat at the counter, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her reality. An hour ago, she'd been alone on the pavement, humiliated and hurting. Now she was surrounded by people who'd chosen to see her, to stand with her, to refuse to let cruelty win. Maggie slid onto the stool beside her, sipping coffee. You handled that well, she said. Kate laughed shakily. I didn't do anything. You all did. You pressed charges. Maggie countered. That takes guts. A lot of people wouldn't. I'm tired of being scared, Kate admitted quietly. I'm tired of people like Ethan thinking they can do whatever they want because I can't fight back the way they expect. You fought back the way that mattered, Charles said from her other side, with dignity, with strength. Don't sell yourself short. Before they left, Charles handed Kate a card with the Iron Crossroads logo and a phone number. If you ever need anything, ride to work, someone to walk you home, doesn't matter. You call. We're local. We look out for our community. I don't even know you, Kate said, staring at the card. You do now, Charles replied with a small smile. Over the following weeks, Kate's life shifted in ways she hadn't anticipated. The story spread through Riverside, not as gossip, but as testament. The bikers became regulars at the Daily Scoop, stopping by for coffee and conversation, treating Kate like the capable person she'd always been while simultaneously making it clear they had her back. Other customers started speaking up more, creating a culture where disrespect wasn't tolerated. Kate found herself smiling more, joking with customers, even accepting help when it was offered genuinely. She'd spent so long equating independence with isolation, believing that needing support meant admitting weakness. But the bikers had shown her something different, that true strength wasn't about doing everything alone. It was about building community, about standing together, about refusing to let anyone face cruelty in silence. On December 3rd, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, Lou organized a small celebration at the diner. He hung a banner, invited the Iron Crossroads MC, and asked Kate if she'd say a few words. She'd never been comfortable with attention, but standing there, surrounded by friends new and old, she realized she had something worth sharing. "I used to think being strong meant never asking for help," Kate said, her voice steady. "I thought if I could just do everything myself, prove I didn't need anyone, then people would respect me. But I was wrong. Strength isn't about isolation. It's about having people who refuse to let you face the world alone. It's about standing up when someone falls. It's about community." She looked at Charles, at Maggie, at Danny and the rest of the bikers who'd changed her life with one simple choice: to stop. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me, for standing with me, for reminding me that I'm not alone." The diner erupted in applause. Charles raised his coffee cup in a quiet toast, and Kate smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Not the fragile, fearful kind, but the solid, grounded kind that comes from knowing you're part of something bigger than yourself. Ethan faced charges and community service. His varsity jacket lost its power, and Kate Thompson, the waitress in the wheelchair who'd been knocked down, rose stronger than before, carried not by her own strength alone, but by the community that refused to let her fall. Because sometimes the heroes you need arrive exactly when your heart needs them most, rumbling down Riverside Avenue on 10 motorcycles, ready to remind the world that kindness, dignity, and justice still matter. And they always will. Thank you. If you enjoyed this story, we'd appreciate it if you rated it from 1 to 10. Support us with a like and subscribe to our channel, Twister Stories. Comment from what place you're watching us. Thanks for your unconditional support in every story. Blessings to you and your family.